He moved beneath the olive's aching shade, untroubled by the roots from which he came. The vine was rich, its sap in silence made, a sacred blood without a spoken name. The leaves gave him with neither thought nor sound, and bread was broken just by being near. But in that feast, no hunger yet was found, no darkness found between the gift and seer. The world affirmed him not by sign or voice, but by inclusion in the living frame. The vine, the branch, the table, and the choice not made, but lived through lineage and name. In all things known, the Scion was complete, a mystery whose answer never pressed. But something stirred beneath the garden seat, a tremor buried deep within his chest. A sweetness soured not in taste but trace, a pressure from the ring not felt before. The altar held a scroll he could not face, and silence held the door within the door. The serpent slid between the stones and vine, its gaze a hook that turned his eyes to flame. It coiled around a lineage once divine, now etched in names too heavy to reclaim. The scroll unrolled with breathless gravity, its every mark a claim upon his soul. What once was gift now hummed with enmity, the price of bearing what he did not hold. The ring grew tighter with each trembling line, the cross within his chest began to bloom. He questioned not the truth, but the design. What garden grows if grafted on a tomb? The blooming cross did not yet break the skin, but stirred a grief whose source he could not see. Enosh had felt this tremble once within, and Kenan left it buried under plea. The serpent's coil did not forbid, but framed, a mirror carved from what he dared not name, and so the Scion marked and claimed and blamed, stepped outward clothed in memory and shame. The sun drew down in veils of smoke and sand, its judgment held in silence, not decree. He walked the desert bearing in his hand a cloth once white, now bloodied history. The broken seal he carried in his chest was cause enough to order all his thought. The line had fractured, so he must invest his pain in laws the lineage had taught. He named his exile not as curse, but cost, a thread unraveled to preserve the whole. Each loss became an offering to the lost, each scar a mark that structured out his role. He learned to think like those who praise through tears, to trace the guilt through generations' grain. Mahalalel's voice rose through the years. Give suffering a frame and call it rain. Yet something in the logic frayed and failed, as cracks appeared in every sealed belief. The cloth he bore no longer simply trailed, it whispered back with strange and future grief. He reached a ridge where all the world was dream, and saw a city shining through the dust. Its towers, bright and real, began to seem too wide for reason, yet too near to trust. No path had led him there by rule or chain, no logic tracked the shimmer or its grace. But in his brow he felt a weightless strain, an unseen crown that time could not displace. The dream did not obey the paths he knew, but leapt like fire across the structured night. Its symbols spoke in language not yet true, but truer than the words that birthed his plight. He saw a child without a name or sign, yet holding worlds within a single stare. He was that child, though older in the spine. His steps foretold before he breathed the air. Now reason bent before this burning gate, and all his rules began to twist and yield. He did not fall, but floated into fate, a mind undone, a heart no longer sealed. He passed beneath the arches of the dream where every stone was layered with a name. The city breathed in chords and not in scheme, its silence rich with meaning none could claim. The staff he bore now glinted dark and bright, two metals braided into thought and vow. Each step re-echoed someone else's right. Each glance returned his face with deeper brow. The streets were written with ancestral threads, Enoch's flame and Methuselah's delay. In every cup, a whisper from the dead. In every tree, the past returned to say. He drank, and in that drinking felt the root, not only of the tree but of his role. The Grail was not a vessel but a fruit. To taste was to remember what was whole. But wholeness carried weight too vast to bear, and echoes turned to burdens in his chest. The question rose, what truths remain to share, when even sacred memory must rest? The library lay hidden in the stone, its shelves arranged by breath and not by dust. A star above him shimmered, half unknown, Bethlehem's echo breaking through his trust. He touched a book that pulsed beneath his hand, its letters warm, their meanings yet unread. The pages spoke in ways he'd understand, only if lived, not studied, heard or said. He felt the crack within the holy cup, and saw the wisdom trapped within the seal. The living icon had to rise, erupt, A vessel must be broken to reveal. And so he let the artifacts unwind, the scrolls unspooled, the patterns torn and freed. To keep was now to fracture and to bind. The wine must spill, the wound be left to bleed. But in that break, new meaning could not form, unless the fragments also could align. A chalice cracked still holds the sacred storm, but only if star's light is freed to shine. He climbed the tower carved in breath and flame, each stair a chord tuned close to blood and sky. No walls confined the music of his name, no roof, no gate, no ceiling left to try. Enoch stood still within the passing air, not figure but convergence of the wind. They shared no speech, yet everything was there, a meeting not of answers but of kin. The tower turned to glass that held the light, and he became the mirror through its core. He saw himself in past and future flight, reflected in what neither held before. Flames danced in threefold union at his brow, a trinity of breath without a frame. He did not ask the when, the why, or how. He simply was the burning and the name. But what he saw in such harmonic fire was fragile, not a state to be retained. The world below still called with ash and mire. The mirror must descend what it had gained. He stepped down holding purpose like a flame no longer seeking, but becoming sign. The Alpha and Omega etched his name, the ring a seal of origin and line. He walked the alleys gathering the true, preserving only what could echo still. The ark he built was formed of what he knew, yet shaped by silence more than strength or will. Each stone inscribed with voices he had heard, each window carved to catch both light and cry. A cathedral not of creeds but of the word, the living breath that asked not how but why. He bore the flood not as a force to fear, but as a means to separate and weigh. The past, once whole, grew beautiful and sheer when stripped to what could hold another day. Yet in that choosing lay a final cost. What voice to save, what echo to erase. The Scion held what might preserve the lost, yet knew not all could stand within that place. He reached the edge where meaning came apart, the sword he bore now heavy without name. Old symbols cracked beneath his weighted heart, and faith no longer followed form or flame. The city's ash blew softly through his frame, its echoes scattered, songs reduced to dust. The gospels he had guarded bore no claim, too fractured now to carry sacred trust. He swung the sword but found no wound it fit, its power vast yet shapeless in his hand. To forge anew, he'd first unbind from writ, discard the old without betraying land. The sword began to change not through the fire, but by the stories gathered in its hilt. A weapon now that cut through old desire, not built for conquest, but for what is built. He faced the ash and did not raise a cry, but took the fragments, set them into place. And from the pieces grew a narrowed sky, not wide but focused, piercing through disgrace. The flood came not with waters, but with voice, 1,000 names demanding to be kept. Reflex became command, no longer choice, and in his palm the oldest sorrow slept. The knot of bloodline twisted through his grip, a wound of lineage tightening the thread. He bled not from the blade, but from the script, from what the judge had thought was live, but dead. The world around him mimicked what he'd done, projected myths returned through sound and face. But instinct, once a compass, now would run in circles bound by genealogic trace. He paused, and in the pause began to see that not all roots deserve a second breath. To sever is not always blasphemy. Some knots must loose to pass the test of death. So gently, with a wisdom not from fight, he chose what branch would feed and what would fall. The flood withdrew, not gone, but turned to light, and left the world half-written, open, small. The tomb was open, not with scream or blaze, but with a silence deeper than the grave. He crossed the threshold not in dread, but praise, a living ark shaped now not just to save. The remnants of the flood became his voice, the ashes of the sword his written breath. The world was agent now, not just his choice, the self no longer parted from its death. He met the land as kindred, not as king, each tree a mirror, every storm a vow. The ring he wore did not command or sting, but marked the now as more than past or now. No longer burdened, lineage became a story lived in others, not his own. He was not flame, nor tomb, nor even name, but what remains when all the seed is sown. And so he walked beyond the world he bore, not leaving, but extending through their breath. The threshold met, the ark concealed no more, for what he saved was born of life, not death.